we will wait a little bit for audience to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, some people have arrived. I think that we can begin.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bogdan. Today we will have a third lecture in the special project Video Games French Edition in partnership with French Institute in Moscow and Scream School. And our guest today is Philippe Dubois from mo5.com. During the lecture, you can ask your question in the chat or special forum down below. After presentation, Philippe will answer on them. Philippe, good luck.
Thank you very much. So we can begin, Bogdan? Yes?
Okay. Yes, sure, you can begin.
So, well, hello to everyone. I am Philippe Dubois. I'm a French engineer, nearly 50 years old now. And I will try to give you a nice story. This is a story of the French video games industry, in fact, and all the people involved into this industry. A lot of people involved into this. And first, I wanted to apologize because I'm a French guy. And usually you may know that French people doesn't speak English very well, or foreign languages as well, and that's my case. So I'm sorry if you don't understand something. Just take a note, and maybe you can address the question by the end of this lecture. But yes, I wanted to apologize. And the fun fact is that my wife is Russian. She's from Moscow as well as my family-in-law, and but I don't know any words in Russian. So yes, I double apologize for that. But still, I will do my best to give you this story. It's a bit sad story, but it ends very luckily and very happily. So that's okay. History of the French video games industry and the people who made it. I wanted to be sure to insist on that because everything about this lecture is about people behind it. No people, no industry, no people, no creation, no people, no video games. So the main vision, the main goal, the main project is about talking about people behind this industry, French video games industry. So this is my plan. We'll talk a little bit about my association, mo5.com. Thank you, Bogdan, which is a French non-lucrative association, which goal is to preserve digital patrimony. But we will speak a little more about that. We will see the first publishers and market creation during the 80s in France, back in France. Some famous French video games creators, some portraits of very famous video games creators in France. The end of the French industry, which is a very bad moment into the history of this industry. Then creation of APOM and SNJV. We will talk a little about schools, video game schools in France. We will see some French Knight of Art and Letters. That means a very uncommon, some kind of medal given to people, very important people in France. And there are some knights which are video games creators. That is very important. We will talk about, and that is, I think, very important, maybe to you too in Russia. It's about video games and politics. Yes, I think that's very important. And of course, we'll finish this lecture by what about nowadays with modern independent creators, with modern small studios and AAA games such made by a studio, large and worldwide studios like Ubisoft, of course, Download, Quantic Dreams, and so on. So let's begin with association.com. It's just a short presentation to explain who I am and what we have been working on in France and why I am speaking to you this evening. The association mo5.com is a French non-lucrative, this is a very important association which goal is to preserve our computer and video games patrimony. That says the history of video games and computer. And we work with national institutions to prepare. This is one of the biggest and most important goal of this association is to work with national institutions so that one day a true national museum entirely dedicated to our digital culture will be born in France. And we will never stop before it happens, because that is very important. And everything we are working on is about this, to have a national museum dedicated to digital culture. And we have been working very much since something like 20 years now. And we can say that we are well known all over the world, and people in Japan, people in United States of America, people in Russia now, thanks to you. And a lot of people in the world knows about the work of mo5.com. So I'm very pleased to be its founder and president, and to explain this to you this evening. We can see some big events we have done with association mo5.com. This is our website, the English version of our website. So you can visit it, of course, at https://mo5.com, of course. And well, it says everything towards the National Museum of Digital Cultures, because we are sons and daughters of the digital era, and we want something that represents ourselves and our culture into a national institution. Our goal, but I already spoke about it, and we can say digital media and video games are part of our culture. Everything into this lecture is about this. Video games are very important because they are part of our culture, and they are cultural things for everyone, almost in France, maybe in Russia, I don't know yet, but I want to learn about it. You will tell me, maybe. But in France, that's the case. Video games are exactly at the same cultural level as could be the books, the music, movies, etc., etc. Some exhibition very fastly, some at the City of Science in Paris. We have been introducing video games into this national institution for the first time in 2002. Then we produced in 2009 something called the Sega Museum. You know about Sega, I think so. One very powerful Japanese publisher. And we have made maybe one of the best exhibition about everything that made Sega until 2009 here it was into an event called Japan Expo in France. And for the occasion, people in Japan learn about mo5.com. The directors of Sega Japan just learned about mo5.com and this Sega Museum. We were very proud about it. Museum Games 2010, it was the first time ever that video games entered a national museum. So it was a very important way, a very important point for the video games to be recognized in France like a cultural thing, like a cultural way. And it was into museum games as soon as 2010. Game Story 2011 is very important because, and I will speak a lot about Game Story during my lecture, because I could say that the image of video games changed forever since 2011 and within Game Story. Within the Game Story event, the image of the video games changed forever in France and become mostly accepted like a cultural thing. And that is very, very important, I think. Game Story was continued to Quebec, Canada in 2013. One of I think it was one of the best exhibition about video game history in the world. And it received during something like 11 months of opening about it was about 240,000 people, and it was a very huge success for the Museum of Civilization back in Quebec. And since we are connecting a lot of events into the main events, main pop culture, as you could say, even in Paris and in France. To finish with mo5.com, we have been working for nearly 20 years now, 20 years now. We have in collection more than 60,000 items. That means several thousand machine, software, peripherals, books, magazine, everything that you can understand about speaking about digital culture and video games and computer history. That is a very large collection, and I think we are the most active association in Europe doing this kind of events, doing this kind of exhibition. Last slide about mo5.com is just to say hello to our honorary members, people we are counting on, and which are the most known and worldwide video games creators. You could see some people here like Jordan Mechner, Alexei Pachinov as well. You have many French creators, but the creators of Space Invaders, some Japanese as well. Well, a lot of people, nearly 60 members now, and well-known worldwide creators, video games, speaking sometime about mo5.com, and of course, and that's the most important case, the most important thing, speaking about the necessity, the need to protect, to preserve our digital culture and their culture, their way, their work, and their video games to be protected. So we can start after the presentation of mo5.com. We can begin with the birth of the first French publishers, and of course the creation of the industry and the market of video games in France. It was during the 80s. It began in 83, something like that. And you can see a lot of people here with the very first video games publishers here. You have Air Informatique with Emmanuel Viau. Infogrames will be changed its name by Atari a bit later, created by Bruno Bonnell. You have Cobrasoft, Loriciel, Ubisoft, of course, you may know about Ubisoft because it is, I think, the third worldwide publisher of video games right now with Electronic Arts and Activision. Callisto by Nicolas Gomme, Cryo Interactive with Philippe Dubois and many other publishers. But you can see that during the 80s, since 1983 to 1980, there was a lot of them because all those people just woke up one day and saw the first video games of their life. And they said, wow, that is so interesting. That is so new. This new media, new multimedia, of course, new digital media is so interesting that I want to be part of it. I want to spend my life, for many of them, to work into video games. And so they did and created the first publishers. 1983, that's very soon, because if you remember, the first video games console was made in America in 1977, in fact. And it's just 5 years later. So those people are the creators of the French industry. And you will see that they have worked a lot, and there will be a lot of surprise for them during the next years. So we can see some famous French creators together. Of course, not all of them, because there are many, but some of them. Here they are, the people who made the best French video games, or who are still making the best French video games, with Philippe Dubois, with Frederick Kernel, Éric Chahi, Paul Cuisset, Emmanuel Viau, etc., etc. And the woman, of course, Muriel Tramis, very interesting woman. And I wanted to add, by the end, at the lowest corner of this slide, some people which are in fact artists, because in my vision, in my mind, people making video games are artists. You could be artist of coding, you could be artist of graphics, doing graphics, you could be artist doing music, of course, and etc., etc. So all the people, the 5 people here at the lowest corner of this slide are musicians, and I could say I'm very glad, I'm very proud to be a friend of mainly all these people, because they are very friendly, very open-minded, and what they have done for friends, for video gamers like me, I could say that for me they are like feathers, like like a feathers to me and to all the French people who played their video games. So let's spend some time with some of them, not all of them, just 4. First is Philippe Dubois. It's very funny because I must say to you, what is the story of Philippe Dubois? Philippe Dubois was not born as a video game maker. No, he is a musician. And one day, at his music store, he encounters the first computer of his life, which is a Sinclair ZX80, a very, very simple computer with just 1 kilobyte of RAM, very simple and absolutely unable to display color and to make sound. So he wanted to buy this computer because he wanted to do music with it, and of course, this Sinclair computer was not able to do anything like this. But still, Philippe just wrote a program in basic language, very simple language. And the first program he made was, with 10 input, what is your name, 20 print your name is, and 30 is hello, print hello your name, something like that, very simple. So Philippe did this program, and the computer asked to Philippe, what is his name? So Philippe Ulrich answered, Philippe Ulrich. My name is Philippe Ulrich. And the computers answers, hello, Philippe Ulrich. And that was magic. That was magic for Philippe. And at this moment, at this very moment, it says, okay, computers are magic, video games are magic. I want to spend all my life making video games. And he did. And he created a lot of studios. He began at Informatique. He went to Cryo in 2002. And he did work on a lot of very famous French video games, such like Ark of the Captain Blood, the Dune video game, very successful worldwide, Atlantis, Versailles, Mega Race, the Second World for TV channel here, etc., etc. I think he's one of the most talented video game French maker. And what I wanted to say is that he's an artist, he's a musician at the very beginning, but still video games change his life, and he spent all his life, he's not dead, luckily, making and still making video games. So this is a video, I'm not sure it's working, yes it is. A short video of Dune, if you don't know the video game. Yeah, so here it is. It was made in 1993, and it was a very huge success worldwide. And it's funny because, you know, this year, the next movie from Denis Villeneuve about Dune just came out at the movie theater. And so you could see one of the very first video game made about the books of Dune. Next one is Frederick Kernel. He's a very talented programmer. And Frederick joined, in fact, one of the first French publishers, Infogrames, in the city of Lyon, in France. And Frederick was very talented when writing 3D routines, you know, 3D programs to display the first 3D object you could see on a PC. And so he made his most famous video game in 1992, which is Alone in the Dark. And Alone in the Dark is not just one of the very first 3D games on PC. He created a very new genre by itself, that he said the survival horror genre, which will be followed by a lot of people worldwide. Like if you know the license, the saga Resident Evil, it was made from what they saw about in Alone in the Dark. So Alone in the Dark was a very, very, very huge success and a very modern 3D games way before the arrival of 3D consoles like the Sony PlayStation and so on. He made other video games like Little Big Adventure and worked with Sega within the No Cliché studio to give birth to other 3D games and network games on the Sega Dreamcast console. So you can see here a small video about Alone in the Dark. If you don't know this game, it is very, very important into the history of video games because there were nothing like Alone in the Dark before 1992. And by that time, there were no 3D editors, you know, to make 3D characters and so on. Nothing existed. So Frederick just created everything he needed to do this job and to make this third 3D game, survival horror, on PC. Next one is Eric Chahi. You may learn or hear about him this year because this is the 30th anniversary of his best video games, Another World, this year. So he made his most first video games back in 1983 on 8-bit computers like the Amstrad CPC and so on. And he worked with Frederick Kernel on some video games as well, and created his most famous video game, Another World, in 1991. And for this, he used very advanced animation techniques. He worked on 16-bit computers like the Commodore Amiga or Atari ST. And those computers were so advanced at that time, of course, that they have been able to display full animation in 3D or 2D. And so was birthed Another World. And of course, he continues his career into video games with games like From Dust in 2011 and Paper Beast just 1 year before, which had a very huge success worldwide. So this is a video of Another World. And like I said, we will be celebrating this game, very successful game this year for the 30 years birthday. And of course, you can play mainly all those titles and Another World into modern consoles and tablets or smartphones. Next one is Paul Cuisset. Paul Cuisset is also a very talented programmer, and his best work was on his best, the most famous video game ever was Flashback, which is a kind of evolution from Another World. And it was the best-selling French video game in history at that time, of course, according to the Guinness Book of Records. So that means something. And of course, Paul continues his career and still making video games, and will be making a sequel to a Flashback, which is, of course, will be called Flashback 2, of course. Whoops. And as usual, you could play Flashback on modern console and smartphone on tablets. Whoops. But we can leave the 80s behind and to enter into the revolution of the 3D consoles with the arrival of the Sony PlayStation, with the Sega Saturn and so on. And of course, the 3D graphic cards on PC. And I could say that still at this point, you must understand that all the publishers, all the creators, all the video games we saw until now were the work of very little teams, just a few people working on those titles, like 3 people back in the 80s to 10, 20, maybe 30 people, no more, during this era between the mid 90s to the beginning of 2000. And still, they were still making very good video games in France on modern console and in 3D, like Motor Racer, like Verily, Toy Commander, Nightmare Creatures, and so on. All those video games were bestsellers on PlayStation, on PC, etc. So you could say everything is okay, but still making video games in plain 3D and into those modern video game console was already a bit harder than working into 8-bit computers or 16-bit computers and the first video game console. It was harder, but still they were there. But then, and that's about the sad story of this lecture, there was something very bad happening to the French industry. In fact, during 2000 to 2003, you must understand that the fragile and young French industry of video games nearly disappeared from the world. It was very sad because, and I found two factors for that. The first was the arrival of the next generation of video game console with the PlayStation 2. And I will explain, of course, why. And the next factor is what I called the Canadian factor. And you will understand very well what happened and the danger, the distress, everything that's happened to all these French publishers, very successful between the 80s and the 90s, and nearly all of them disappeared between 2000 and 2003. Wow. First, it was the arrival of the PlayStation 2 in 2000, and I called it the PlayStation 2 syndrome. And why is that? Because they were already making 3D games, and they were successful. Okay, so what's the point? What are you telling us, Philippe? In fact, it's a friend of mine, the video game developer, that one day explained it to me. It was, Philippe, you must understand that making a video game into the PlayStation 2 is 600% more costly than before. It will cost 6 times the money you wanted to spend into a video game, to make a video game on the first PlayStation, to make a video game on the second model of the PlayStation. That's the PlayStation 2 syndrome. It was very difficult financially for very small studios and very fragile, mainly, handcrafting video games to follow the worldwide market and the biggest video games publishers in the world, like Ubisoft, of course, but like Konami, Electronic Arts, and so, etc. That just couldn't follow, in fact. So a lot of them, small publishers, went bankrupt, in fact, and just disappeared from the video game market in France. The second factor is the Canadian factor. We like Canadian and we like Québécois people as well because they speak French. That's okay. But in fact, back into the 1999, one politic in Canada says, okay, we want to develop people working into the digital world. So we will make a tax exemption plan for all the publishers and all the video games creators in the world. If they could set foot in the Canada, for example, they will not pay property taxes for 10 years. 10 years, mainly for free, mainly. You could create your own building in Montreal, in Canada, and started to publish and to create video games. It was like a call, made to all video creators and publishers in the world saying, hey, come to Canada, it's free. You could do whatever you want. You can create whatever you want. And all the people you want to hire to make video games here will be not free, of course, but will be free of charges for a certain time. And so they did. So all the publishers, the biggest video games publisher in the world, went to Canada, as well as Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Activision, and so on. And this is the view from France is that we call this a brain leak, when all people suddenly leaves France to go to Canada. And that says that in France, nothing was ready to compete with that. Nothing. The small publisher within already the PlayStation 2 syndrome was not, for a lot of them, able to follow the worldwide market. And plus that, the Canadian factors came. And so maybe they wanted to just, to stop because they were fed up. They were fed up with all this situation. And that is said that at this point, politics, the government in France, was not able to understand the suffering of the French publisher. They were not aware of the video game industry at all. And so, who will save the French industry? Because nowadays, the French industry still lives and is very lucrative and very creative. So it exists, but we will save it. Well, I could say that all the people you see there are the true heroes and the saviors of the French industry. There are Guillaume de Fondemière, Ariel de Costa, Antoine Villette, Nicolas Gomme, Julien Villedieu, David Cage. All those people saved the fragile French industry. And they give birth to a first association called APOM. APOM was born in 2001. You understand, huh? This way, we were within the PlayStation 2 syndrome into the 2000 and the Canadian factor between 1999 and 2003. So they created, by a call of Nicolas Gomme, the APOM in 2001. And the goal of APOM was to protect what was still remaining of the first publishers in France, of the French video game creators. And so just 1 year later, in 2002, they made a proposition to the government, like into the form of 10 proposals to save the French industry. And it was given to the French Prime Minister, that we'll speak a little later. It was at that time Jean-Pierre Raffarin, so that the Prime Minister could understand what was at stake at this time. And everything, in fact, was at stake. It was very sad, and I want to cry when I speak about it. But still, the APOM is working and made these 10 proposals. They created the first federation, European federation, which is called the EGDF, European Game Developers Federation, to speak with the other countries in Europe and to federate everything. Because the idea behind the APOM is that when you're alone, you're very fragile. You could die very easily. So the best way to protect yourself is together with all the people involved into the video games industry. So went the APOM with a lot of people from the French industry inside it, and to protect it for the next and the following years to come. And finally, and what is very important, following the Canadian way of, to make video game publisher to come into the Canadian soul, they arrived with the help of the European Commission in 2008 to vote for a tax exemption plan that will help the small studios to continue to create video games. And without it, we will not speak anymore of French video games, maybe. But thanks to APOM, we still have a French industry of video games. And finally, later in 2008, APOM became the actual SNJV, Syndicat National du Vidéo, which means in English, National Video Game Syndicate. That's very simple. And which goal is still, of course, to promote the creation of French video games in France, of course. And we saw a very, very interesting and surprising fact following, the arrival of the 10 proposals to the government received by the Prime Minister Jean-Pierre Raffarin. In 2003, Jean-Pierre Raffarin, same Prime Minister, came to Angoulême, which is a nice city in France. And there was one of the very first multimedia formation school, in fact, like Scream School. And he told to the people in Angoulême, okay, I'm Jean-Pierre Raffarin. I like video games. I want to, to protect them and to make them evolve in France. So from now, in Angoulême, we will create the first national school of video game. And this is the creation of the Engmin in Angoulême, finally in 2005, which is the first national video game school in France. So this school is very well known now worldwide, and is making, of course, every year a lot of students, a lot of good projects, and they gain a lot of awards worldwide about making video games. So they are one of the examples to follow when you are speaking about video game school and successful, of course, video game school. The next one is the first private video game school. It is called Izart, and it was created in Paris in 2001, very early. And this school is very, very interactive, very attractive. And it made a first international cooperation with a Japanese school, of course, interested into computers and video games. It was in 2005 with the Niigata Computer College. The second one, when they opened a campus in Montreal, back in Canada, in 2010, and in 2015 with the Tokyo University of Technology. And finally, they've opened a third campus in Nice, which is a very nice city in the south of France. And the fun fact is that this third campus is in fact an international one, and they give courses in English. So that's a very interesting point. And Izart tends to expand and to help other countries in the world to receive and to create a video game school, of course. Third step, to save the French industry is to make people, video game creators, some celebrities. So went the French Knight of Arts and Letters. This is a true recognition given by a medal to those people for everything they made about culture and French culture. These medals are given by the French Ministry of Culture, mainly. And they began with Philippe Dubois, that we spoke about some time ago. Back in 1999, it was the very first Night of the Art and Letters celebrated in France. And of course, the goal is not, just to say, hey, we are celebrating one people, one French people between all the others. But you could see that like a helping hand, yes, to the video game industry. Because when you elect someone like to be a celebrity, like to be a knight of art, it is very important. The word art means everything. You are helping all the industry, in fact. And that's why that happened a lot. And in 2006, we have a very surprising fact. It was with Michel Ancel, the creator of Rayman. Maybe you know about this video game. We will see one later. Frederick Kernel, that we spoke about with Alone in the Dark. And the Japanese one, and that I think you know about, is Shigeru Miyamoto-san in Japanese, who is in fact, of course, like you may know, the creator of Mario, Super Mario. And here in the center, you can see the French Minister of Culture. By the way, it was Renaud Donnedieu de Vabre, but we will speak about him later and why he did this. Yes, exactly, in details. To finish with the Night of Art and Letters, we have Eric Viennot and Peter Molineux, who is not French, but whatever, We like it very much. And there is a gap between 2007 and 2018. And then it was Muriel Tramis, one of the very few, it's bad luck, very few people, women involved into video games, but this is changing a lot. And that's cool, that's nice. And David Cage and Yves Guillemot for the creation and maintaining Ubisoft, like being the first French video game publisher in the world. And finally, and I was there, it was a very nice celebration this year with Eric Chahi, creator of the video game Another World. And then we can speak now why politics support is so important for video games. Because in fact, I believe, I'm pretty sure from my experience back in France, that without politics support, you can't develop and make, you can't evolve the video game industry in a country. It will be very, very hard, very difficult to evolve. So we can speak about some politics, but the first thing I wanted to tell you about is the creation in 1999 of an association, another one, just like GameStory.com, but this one is very important because I could say that before Game Story, before the exhibition we talked about in 2012, there were still people in the government, in the newspaper, in the media, journalists and so on, speaking badly about video games, saying that a young people killed several people somewhere. And of course, he played video games. So that means that video games are making killers, of course. I am playing video games for nearly 40 years now, and I am a killer, of course. I'm joking, of course, that's bullshit. But you have to have, you need people, scientists, to explain that, to say that is bullshit. Video games are just the reflect of our society. If we have killers or psycho into our society, maybe they are just playing video games like all the other people. That's all. That's not video games that change them into what they are. No. So that was the work of the OMNSH, in French, Observatoire des mondes numériques en sciences humaines, and it could be translated by Observatory of Digital Worlds in Human Sciences, always speaking about people and humans. Inside the OMNSH, there were no creators, no video game creators, no journalists, no politics, no entrepreneurs, but still video game players. And there were, in fact, scientists, sociologists, psychologists, researchers, students, professors, and so on. People who wanted to study video games for what they are, just a part of our culture, a part of our society. That's it, that's all. And the role was that each time a media, a newspaper, a politic were to say something bad about video games, to do some fact checks and to give a scientific answer to that, explaining that nowadays in France, we are 55% of the French population playing video games. Are we all killers? I believe not. And so I believe that you are playing video games, you are not killers, not everyone. So the answer is not video games are making things worse or are changing people into madness. No, people are what they are, and doing video games is just a cultural way of a cultural thing to do into your life. So they were publishing a lot of articles, helping students, giving conferences, and still always giving conferences to, to educate people, to educate the government and the politics to understand that video games are not evil, and that on the contrary, they are a chance for all of them, for everyone, to do something great, to do something beautiful, to create some art, and to diffuse some kind of a part of the cultural way of a country. Because I believe that in France, we are making video games into a certain way. Americans are doing the same differently, Japanese one, and of course, in Russia, you are making video games differently than French, American, Japanese, and so on. So each country has its own way of seeing, of making video games, and that's very interesting because they are just explaining who they are and what is their culture, their vision of our society, and maybe one day our digital world. So MNSH is very important in France, and thanks to their role, to their work, and to Game Story in 2012, the image, I repeat, of video games was changed forever in France. And no one, you can understand that no one in France speaks badly about video games without thinking twice now. That's very important. Some politics as well. Jean-Pierre Raffarin, Prime Minister between 2002 and 2005. We spoke a little of him before. It was the first Prime Minister to acknowledge the existence of this fragile and young French video games industry. And so he wanted to help it. And he received the proposals of the Association APOM to try to vote a tax aid for the video games industry. And like I said, he founded the first National Video Game School, the NGMIN, in 2005. Next one is Renaud Donadieu de Vabre. He succeeded to Mr. Raffarin into the file to the Commission, to the European Commission about the tax aid for the French industry. And he promoted to answer to, to understand the European Commission went back on this file for the tax aid to the French video game industry, went back to Mr. Donadieu de Vabre saying, okay, we understand what you are trying to do to protect your young industry, but you're speaking about video games like being part of our culture. The question is, are video games really part of our culture? Are video games cultural? And so Mr. Donadieu de Vabre went into promoting 5 video game creators, just like we saw with Michel Ancel, Shigeru Miyamoto, and so on, to prove to the European Commission that yes, those people, those French or not French, Japanese people, are just people like everyone else, but they are making cultural things. This is their way to do cultural things into video games. So yes, video games are part of our culture. And the European Commission accepted and voted in 2008 the tax aid fund for the French video games industry. That's very important. The third one is Frederick Mitterrand, Minister of Culture between 2010 and 2012. It was, from my point of view, one of the most receptive French ministers about the video games culture, and he liked it very much. He wanted to promoting video game schools. He signed and allowed the birth of the first very important exhibition in France about video game history. It was Game Story with mo5.com and the most valuable cultural institution back in France. He promoted the City of Science, Cité des Sciences in Paris, with 1 million euros to create a very beautiful exhibition, which was called Video Games, the exhibit. And the last things he made, many things he made, but one of the last about video games was to transform one national institution taking care of the movie theaters, of the cinematography, of the movies, which is called the CNC, Cinematography National Center in France, and to change it, to add just 2 letters to the CNC, that it will become the CNC EA or IA, which means animation and video games, animation and interactivity. So that the CNC, a national institution, could publicly support the French video games industry. That is very important. Sorry, that is the cat. Nowadays, and to finish my lecture, we can speak about some modern independent creators, small studios, and AAA, very big video games made by French publishers like Ubisoft, like Quantum Dreams, like Dontnod, and so on. One of the first I wanted to show you, and that's a very funny one, is Rayman, Raving, Rabbids. In French, it was Rayman et les lapins crétins, which is a very, very funny video game, and one of the very first into the console Nintendo Wii, with the Wiimote. Sorry for the advertising. Yes, but it was a very funny game, and it got a very huge success worldwide. And since, of course, Rayman is still living, and Ubisoft is still making new Rayman video games. Next one is Heavy Rain, very huge success, international success from the creator David Cage. Within Quantic Dreams, it was back in 2010, and of course, Mr. Cage followed his work with a lot of games, and it was very new at that time to make, at the contrary of Rayman, which is a very childly and very funny video game. Heavy Rain was just at the contrary, something very adult, with an adventure, storytelling, very dark storytelling, and the reception worldwide was was fantastic. And of course, each time a French video maker is making so a success like this, he is promoting the French digital culture and the French way of making video games. So it's very important, of course, for the industry. Another one is Life is Strange by the Parisian studio Dontnod in 2013, and Life is Strange was got an exceptional reception worldwide too. Back in China, they loved Life is Strange. In America, in Europe, maybe in Russia, I don't know, in Japan and so on. Life is Strange is a very nice adventure with a bit of magic, a bit of life storytelling about pre-adult people, this girl, and everything that and the music itself is very beautiful. Everything is about art. I believe, and I do believe, I'm sure, that one day video games will reach the rank of being an art, just like all the others, with sculpture, with music, with books, literacy, and so on. I'm sure one day the video games will reach this state, being recognized like a new form of art by itself. Another one on modern is one video game I like very much, and I think it is important because this is Dead Cells. It was made by a very young and very small studio video game studio in Bordeaux, in south of France. And the fun fact is that Motion Twin is not working like a standard publisher. It's not working with, bosses, people, directors saying, we have to make video games this way. We have to answer to the public with this kind of video games. No, within Motion Twin, there are a lot of people, and everyone has exactly the same level, the same state, the same recognition. They are all their own bosses, in fact, and they could propose, everyone could propose a new video game and working on it with a lot of people around them. That's very new to a new transformation, a new way to create video games and to see the modern industry of video games making. So Dead Cells is a roguelike, a roguelike game that I like very much, using something that you may know about because you are into a video game school. It is about me using a new form of art that is called pixel art, because you're using, big pixels, whatever. And still, Dead Cells is one of the best video games I ever played in my life, and I played a lot, I could assure you. And if you don't know it, you can, I think, try it and be inspired by Dead Cells and everything that is so brilliant and so intelligent about this video game, this roguelike video game. One of the last studio and things I wanted to speak about, because they saw and they used a very different ways of making video games, is the studio Dotemu, which was created in 2007 by two friends, Romain and Xavier. And they choose a very different ways of all the people I know, because when you're making a new studio, you're creating a new video game publisher, you want, of course, to make new video games, just maybe like no one never see before. And themselves at Dotemu, they choose, to licensing to adapt old video games you could find into the arcade games, into Coffee, into into the 80s or the 90s, and to adapt them on modern machines and console. And they make their way very successfully using this technique. And now they are extending to new independent video games, being like a new brilliant modern video game publisher. So the next video game will be told a lot, I think, about worldwide, and it's an adaptation of the American franchise Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'm waiting for this video game myself very much, because I'm pretty sure it will be a huge worldwide success. I don't know why there are no sound. It is. Or if you know the first video games, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Super Nintendo and so on, you won't be disappointed, because they are still using pixel art technique and to making a new video game on this franchise. And I'm pretty sure it will be a huge, very huge success. Some of the last slides of my presentation is to tell you, I'm sorry, because all the books I'm talking about are in French. And of course, I'm pretty sure very few of you can read some French, but still there are a lot of books speaking about the French industry. We can speak about Préhistoire du jeu vidéo, which talk about the first attempt to create video games in France. Just like the books Une histoire du jeu vidéo en France, a story of video games in France. Bâtisseur de rêve from the author Daniel Ishbia, we speak, there is a kind of one small biography of Philippe Dubois inside, which I spoke about Sinclair's ZX80. Citizen Game was written by Nicolas Gomme, who founded the APOM Association. So he is a very important people in the French industry. One biography about Éric Chailly, about Michel Ancel, about a journalist, Alain Hugues-Lacour. And another one, Press Start, is about everything that was published into the French magazines on the video game on video games in France. So these books are not, I think, available in English. I'm sorry about that, but they are still very interesting. So maybe if you still absolutely want to read some French, you can grab one and use, the Google Translate tools to read it. If it will not be very easily, but still they are very interesting. And nearly everything that I spoke about is written into these books. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Большое спасибо. My wife is Russian, but I don't speak Russian very well. But still, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much to have review this lecture with me. I hope my English level was enough for you to understand what I was being saying. But it was like if I could do like a resume, everything is about people. Everything is about you. It's about you making new video games, explaining yourself, explaining your way of thinking, explaining your culture, and this using video games. And I'm pretty sure that you will succeed, and that in Russia you will need more and more recognition about what could be the birth of a true national video games industry as well. Thank you very much.
Philippe, thank you. That was very nice journey through the whole history of your participating in video games life in French. It was thrilling, and sometimes I'm a little bit envy of how much support your government gives your industry, because in Russia we don't have anything close to it.
Not yet, but maybe at one point we can all work together to give birth to the same envy, to the same support of your politics in Russia. I think it's worth the effort. We have to do this.
Yes.
Is there some questions, Bogdan?
No, we don't have any, but if we will get some by mail, we will send them to you with.
Yes, of course. So I wanted to tell to people that I'm available to speak about video games industry in France or in other countries, to talk about digital patrimony, to talk about preservation of the video games, which is the main goal of my association Frederick.com. And we have a Discord server. The link is given into our website, so people can freely, of course, join us into the Discord server.
I will join it right now, and I think that we will post it somewhere in the comments to this video.
Yes.
For everyone who will be interested in joining your Discord server.
Yes, and I could say that I hope so, that I have been conducting a lecture in St. Petersburg just 2 weeks ago, but it was about preservation of video games. And I will be maybe luckily doing twice this lecture back in Moscow by the end of December. So I will talk about Maria and the Scream School. If this is the case, I hope so. And I will be, I hope, in Moscow by the end of December, and I could join you and speak a lot of things with you if you wish.
It will be very soon. I think that we will be happy to see you in real life.
Nice.
And shake your hand and give you a hug.
Okay, it will be my pleasure. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for your support, Bogdan. Thank you very much to the French Consulate, French Institute, and to the Scream Schools to have accepted my very bad English to speak about the French video game industry. I hope
very
you
good
liked it.
English.
No.
Yes.
No.
I
No, I
like
need
it a
to
lot.
practice. I need to practice. I'm not that bad, but I need to practice a lot. And that's my first time in English about this subject. So, well, in fact, that's okay, I think. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.